Lieutenant Linus is preparing a shuttle. Dr. Cho became a branch admiral, and it doesn't matter if something is hexagonal as long as it works. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 5, Mirrors, written by Joanna Lee and Carlos Cisco. Is that a typo? Cisco? Directed by Jen McGowan. Everybody, we have a very special guest today. Can you believe it? Somebody in the Cisco family, basically. Carlos Cisco, how are you today?
I'm good, and honestly, a former captain too, the WGA. So it all fits.
Right. Very cool, and thank you for helping everybody out.
Called Captain Cisco all summer.
Wow.
Yeah, we met during the strike, and it was fun that we had that in common. That we have that Cisco in common, but
spelled differently, but all same family.
Hey, Cisco, tomato. Yeah. We're cousins.
Yeah.
There's a third spelling out there too.
Yeah, well, let's not talk about that one.
Yeah.
Well, let's instead talk about this episode and this season. First things first, the first thing that popped in my mind when I knew you were coming to join us was, can you please tell us, I mean, you joined in season 3, I believe, as a writer's assistant, right? Moved up into staff writer, now story editor. So you've been with the crew, with the team for 3 years. When you came in, those first days of season 5, can you tell us what the vibe was like? Was it excitement? Was it a slog? Were you like, we're going to try something we've never done before? What was that kind of vibe?
I think it was very exciting on all parts. We were coming into the 32nd century. It was sort of not a completely blank slate, but it was, sort of a setting with like immeasurable potential for what the, far future of Star Trek could look like, could sound like, could be like in tone. And so I think for all of us, it was a super exciting time. I came into Star Trek with no real background in it. I didn't have TV all through the 90s. So I missed all the seminal Star Trek years and when it was airing on TV. But my mom would send me tapes of syndicated Simpsons episodes, so I saw episodes of DS9, I think, in syndication just through commercials. Because as I went through DS9, I eventually was like, "Hey, I recognize this scene. I don't know why I remember it. I've never seen this episode," but went back to that. But on day one, I called the Federation the Empire in front of Alex Kurtzman, kept my job. So, wasn't a total shit show, but I feel like I have an acute understanding of fandom, just being a person who's extremely online and where it comes from, and Star Trek kind of originated everything. And so I sort of took it upon myself to watch all of it. So that first season as an assistant, I watched all of Enterprise, TOS, TNG, DS9, and then burnt out in season 4 of Voyager because it was too much Star Trek while I was working, 10-hour days in the room. So, but I went from knowing nothing to being one of the kind of the canon people throughout the seasons 4 and 5 that a lot of upper level writers would come to and be like, "Oh, I need, what's a cool thing we could put in this script here," and like, let's look on Memory Alpha, do a deep dive.
Wow.
Carlos, this show, I've been saying this for a while now. Discovery to me is because each show has its own kind of theme that rises out of it when you watch it. A DS9, I think one of them is family, for example. That's what I've heard people say. And when I think about Discovery, I think about love stories. And I think that this is like a bunch of love stories. I feel like I'm in love with Saru and the way his love story has kind of emerged out of the storyline. And then I also like Book and Burnham's love story. And I wanted to ask you about this episode because this pretty much encapsulates that theme in one episode. And I thought that you really touched on it great. What was your approach for unveiling these love stories, these coexisting, intertwining love stories between
Yeah,
Maul
well,
and Locke, and yeah.
shout out to Johanna Lee, my co-writer on this, because she had a really big hand in shaping, especially how the love stories kind of played out. But I think, there was always a desire in the room to dig in on these villains more. There was a kind of like structural mandate for the episode that we were going to have this switcheroo of Burnham stuck with Locke and Book stuck with Maul. We wanted that energy in an episode, and so it kind of started with that. And there were a few iterations that we went through in terms of how the episode was going to look, like what the sort of overall kind of like problem of the episode. And this was one that sort of we had broken almost an entirely different episode, and we found that the story between Locke and Maul was taking up so much space and demanded so much space, because like we're really digging in on them as villains and trying to sort of see how they tick, that it actually made us have to repitch with an entirely new sort of setting and sort of environmental problem, because it was too big on that side. Like it was a whole other thing. And so it refocused us down onto this like very tight kind of four-hander, where we're dealing with the two sort of couples paired off with one another, and then the flashbacks, the privileged flashbacks, which we've only done one other time, but not sort of in this way and in this convention, because in I believe it's 410, it might be 409, but it's the one where Book and Tarka are going to the Emerald Chain facility, and you're getting some of Tarka's backstory, but he's telling Book that story. So this is much more of an internal journey for Maul, and that's how we always sort of saw it, is that those scenes are from her perspective, and we were sort of approaching from her POV in those in that love story.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan got what he wanted. He's been screaming, "Breen, the Breen, the Breen."
I was just gonna say, okay, I waited long enough. You even kind of teased it when you said, "Hey, they talk to me. They go, hey, what's a cool thing to put in this season or this episode?" And I'm like, okay, the Breen is something pretty cool. So I don't know if that was your idea or whose idea that was, but how excited were you as a group coming up with the Breen? And are you predicting that the internet will go nuts for it? Because I am too.
I personally was very excited because during the kind of pre-room, before the room got together, it was just Michelle and Kyle, who was on last time, and then I think Alan McElroy, he wrote episode 2, and has been there since the pretty early on. But they were all talking, and Ari asked me and Eric Robbins, who was then writer's assistant that got promoted to staff writer, for some villains. And Eric was pushing really hard for the Vidians, and then I pushed the Breen. And my thinking is after a year of shooting with COVID, like, let's get guys that we can just hire stuntmen to put in Breen costumes. They don't need to talk, like they don't need to be actors or anything. They just need to be bodies there. Not that they're not actors, but you know what I mean? Like in terms of like, we don't need to do a full casting. So it's a little more, economically efficient. We have them in masks, like it's all there. We can have the same 3 guys over and over again. And so
Totally.
That was kind of the thinking behind bringing them in initially. And then for me, DS9 is out of all the Star Treks far and above my favorite one. It's like, I would say, after finishing it, easily in my top 3 favorite shows ever made ever. And so getting to reapproach the Breen was really exciting, because like I think that there's this like really great grand tradition in Star Trek of writers of future iterations of it being fans of the previous and finding that one detail in one episode. I mean, the Breen were mentioned, not seen, once in TNG, and that's it. And then they spawned one of the most important, arcs in the Dominion War saga. And so getting to sort of continue that, getting to sort of both like peel back some of the mystery, but also create more mystery surrounding the Breen was, for me personally, so exciting. And getting that in my episode was like candy.
And
I wanted the
snuck
Ferengi,
a
but I got the Breen.
wormhole
So.
in there too. I was like,
Yeah,
what is
yeah, of course.
I was like, I know what's on the other side of that wormhole. Wait a second.
And a Bolian was mentioned like that.
We so it was interesting. We we were trying to re-break the episode, and so Michelle gave us a sort of an assignment, and a few of us had broken off, and we were coming up with some different things that could. The assignment was basically create an episode or a framework that would work on some of the sets of Strange New Worlds, because we had access to them and we hadn't used them yet. And so, we pitched out a few different ideas, and one of them was like, it's on a science center that's like suspended in a mercury, like a sea of mercury on a planet that's just all liquid. Some things like that, just trying to sort of like use those sets in a different way. And then like we came back in the last half hour of the day, Michelle's like, so let's talk about some ideas that could be the Mirror Enterprise. And so in the last half hour, we came up with this pitch that was like, it's trapped in this pocket dimension. It's, it's basically like a ship in a bottle, or, a mosquito preserved in amber sort of thing. And and then kind of went from there. And then that was the one that Alex approved, and then we were off to the races.
Yeah.
Clever use of the other set that you have access to. I thought that was very clever. And the other thing that I want to give you credit to for as writers, the thing that I thought was clever was when there was the moment when Maul and Locke and Book and Burnham are all stuck in that one kind of medical office or whatever that is. I was thinking, okay, this is a dead end street. How is this going to exit out of this room without somebody getting killed? There's no negotiating, there's no agreement. So what you did by making them having to work together, I thought that was the best usage of making people have to work together in order to both get their loved ones. So kudos to you for, just as a writing tool, coming up with that scenario of them being stuck behind force fields. I liked that. I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, Carlos, you said you didn't watch any TV in the 90s, but I caught that 90s film reference, the mosquito and the amber thing. So maybe not TV shows, but maybe you caught some movies.
Did you catch the 80s film reference in there? There's a deeper cut.
Say it again.
The 80s film reference in there?
No, what was it?
Krull.
Oh,
have you never seen Krull?
It was from the movie Krull.
I love that movie, so I just thought
the Krull was something that you made up coincidentally. Yeah. I didn't even make it.
Well, I mean, it is, but it's not that. But who's to say that Krull wasn't on Kellerun? I don't know.
Wow, nice.
No, we did that. We snuck in a fun one, kind of similar in the third season, about the sort of time traveling Beetlejuicean, who is Yor, but that was a reference to like Time Hunter Yor or something like that. I can't remember exactly. So we've snuck in some fun little old classic sci-fi things
nice.
Here and there.
Very nice.
I like there were some other details that I thought were good. The plaque that was on the wall to kind of focus in on that. On the ISS Enterprise plaque, I thought, who's got that plaque? I also thought to myself,
I was like, Michelle, can I pay someone to just make me like a copy of that thing? Because I know my name's on it.
Yeah. I was looking at that plaque, dude, like thinking, the details matter, and that's part of the details of the continuity of the show. So looking for that, that's a great thing. Also, kudos and shout out to Jen McGowan, who directed this episode.
Amazing.
Thought the pace was very good. A lot of great shots there. Some kind of stuff that I like as a fanboy that I think are typical Star Trek shots, which is one is the pull back from the bridge of something out into the outer space. There was one of those in there. And also like the close up on the metal container getting hit with the phaser shots and seeing the blast marks on the container that Booker was holding up. So little things like that, I think, are details that the director really touched on in a great way.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, she really did the action stuff just like impeccably.
Yeah.
I thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I wanted
Absolutely.
to ask a bit more about the Enterprise set because
Mhm.
as soon as I realized, okay, clearly they're just using their resources, which is a brilliant way to give us extra sets. And also, it's great eye candy for the fans because no fan is going to be like, why are they using the same set? They're going to say, whoa, that's the Enterprise set from Strange New Worlds, you know? But my first thought when I realized that was, were there like 10 suits like breathing down your neck saying, don't mess it. You can have a fight scene, but don't scrap. We got to shoot on this in a month. So, like, were they like tons of rules?
No, I mean, I think like, you know, there's a certain degree of trust because there's a lot of cross pollination in the crew that we did. I think I did hear we messed up their glass that we barreled through in a way that it hasn't worked quite right since. But who knows? But you know, like they've used our sets before and stuff, so I think that there's a similar push and pull on that. But I think that having some shared crew certainly helps in that regard.
Oh, I didn't know that. You share some of the same crew.
I mean, I feel like it's inevitable when there's like studio space that's right near each other in the same space, you know, and we don't shoot at the same time. So I think that there is some cross, you know, there's obviously some difference, especially in, you know, above the line stuff. But I think like some of the lower level people have worked on both.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I want to ask you about the Breen's face when they first removed their helmet, and what was the talk kind of going into visualizing that?
Yeah, so I think, you know, we sometimes in Discovery, like we start with a concept that is brought in by the writers. Sometimes we get something that production design and like, you know, something like Tunde really wants to do with the season. And then we sort of like will back into it narratively and find the explanation. In this case, you know, we had gone back and forth on the Breen a lot. And then we also had the sort of like the little sticky part of Locke having the solid face, and you know we wanted him to be Breen, but somewhere down the line, and I'm actually not sure where it originated from exactly, but we were like, we started seeing from production design pictures of like transparent deep sea fishes, like in particular that one that has like it's just like the basically transparent head and just eyes, and you can see its brain and stuff. And so we started seeing that, and we all started to really like that. But we had already had these things with Locke, where you know his face is solid and stuff like that. And so, you know, Michelle tasked Joanna and I with coming up with the explanation. And you know, in rewatching the episode, I think it's a little muddy in there in terms of how we explained it. But the thinking is that, you know, the Breen always had these refrigeration suits, or at least like as far as we've seen them. So our thinking is that the Breen, as a sort of natural species, were bifurcated in the sense that they can be both gelatinous and solid in that sense. But the solid state takes an immense amount of focus and concentration in order to maintain. And it was basically there as like, this is your protective shell. This is how you stay safe. This is how, you know, you protect your soft gelatinous innards from a very hostile outside world. And then as they developed the refrigeration suits, they lost the need for that both evolutionarily and culturally, and it became a sort of a cultural anathema. You don't show people your solid face because that means you're weak. It means you're stupid. It means you're slow. And for the Breen, it's all about, you know, this sort of like, you know, the way that we had talked about them is sort of like a meritocracy of warriors, but more structured than something like how we've seen like Klingons, right? It's not necessarily about how good you are at killing, but it is like, it's all about like what your placement in the world is like based on your performance. And the suits sort of erase any sort of unique signifier about a person, making them sort of hone in on what your actions and deeds are.
A pure meritocracy.
And that was kind of the idea.
Cool.
Yeah. And you know, there was talk along the season about like, are there multiple species under the mask? And I think like there's not it's not solidified either way. But I think like the way that we played with it is like we're focused on these guys, these jelly Breens, if you will, and
jelly Breens.
And but yeah,
that.
you know,
that's classic.
And then getting to like explore the inside of one of their ships, that's something we'd never seen in Star Trek. That was like when we were talking about what can we do in Discovery that we've never seen before, and I was like, Breen ship, we've never seen the inside, let's do it. So you know, getting to go into that massive carrier, that was another thing too, was like, what do the Breen ships look like? And you know, design wise, I think we took a pretty big departure from some of the Breen ships that we've seen in the past. But what I liked was I had pitched, based off some of the like Star Trek Online Breen ship designs, was like these like colossal city ships, you know, ships that carry entire like armadas in them, like that would carry like a Starfleet fleet inside one of them,
like Macross City. Robotech.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, that was, I was really pleased that we got such this like big behemoth ship and then get to see inside, which, you know, again, not something we've seen before in Star Trek. So very exciting.
Sirach and I have been enamored with the Breen since we covered them at the very tail end of Deep Space Nine. And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for more Breen. We've seen hints of them on other shows, but we finally get real, you know, we can really sink our teeth into this. So we're super excited. I found myself already in the middle of the episode going, oh man, I hope this isn't the only episode. Like I was already thinking like negatively, like I like this so much that I'm sad that it might not happen going forward. Who knows if it will. But one thing for sure I wanted to ask you, Carlos, is we're starting to get a little bit more about Culber's journey. I love Dr. Culber as a character. I love Wilson Cruz. And you guys, you know, as a writing team, have not just given him this episode, this amazing thing to do, and whatever it was, episode 2, I think it was, right?
Mm-hmm. 3,
episode
Janal.
3. Yeah. And then just kind of like let it go. It's carrying over into clearly what's going to be his journey for this season. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get in too much because there's some pretty big spoilers on the fringes of this, but I think like, you know, in developing Culber's arc for the season, we talked a lot about the sort of you know, the Venn diagram of science and religion, and where those two things do pass on, and or you know, or pass over each other. And I think that, you know, there was you know, in talking with Wilson about this, there was a desire on his part to really dig into something that was meaty and internal for him. And so I think that this sort of quasi-spiritual awakening, or you know, at least a broadening of his understanding of what the possibilities could be, was something that was you know, really interesting and appealing to explore for a character that is so grounded in science and what he can see in front of him. So I think that, like, you know, as a room, we really ran with it, and it's something that you're going to see develop more and more over the course of the season. I don't want to say how, but you know, I think the stuff like as is you know, hinted at in this episode, you know, what his worries are going forward with Stamets are some really fruitful places to explore.
Cool.
And I like the scenes with Wilson, with Tilly as well. The two of them together are great on camera, and I think she really kind of makes an effort to be that shoulder for Culber to lean on and to trust, because he's always there for everybody else. It's good that somebody's actually there for him. He
needs someone to talk to every now and then.
Right.
Exactly. So I thought that was another nail that you hit on the head. I love flashbacks. I'm a big fan of flashbacks, so I love the way the flashbacks kind of played out, because it also adds to the depth between Book and Maul's relationship, and the trauma that she went through with perspective-wise between Cleveland Booker. Like the way she sees Cleveland Booker and the way Book sees Cleveland Booker are two different kinds of ways. And I thought that was another interesting dynamic that you touched on in this episode.
Yeah, one thing that we were like adamant about from the start is we wanted Book to appeal to her with this, very disco-esque sense of family, and the Maul to just be like, fuck off. This is not going to work with me. That bullshit is not going to fly.
Yeah.
And Eve just ate up those scenes. Like, she is so good. And I mean, I love Elias too. Like, they're just like, I feel like every scene that they're in, there's just this gravity where it's like the camera just wants to be on them. And, those scenes between him and Burnham were just really tragic. I thought, like, that it's this deeply hurt and broken individual that is, really just wanting peace in his own life. But because of the person he's sort of attached himself to, it's going to be chaos. And because of the actions in his past, it's going to be chaos. And I just think they're a really fun duo for especially Book and Burnham, who, in a different life could have been that. If Discovery had never shown up again.
They kind of are in some ways. Yeah. I think they kind of are, like, Bonnie and Clyde over there, just like breaking rules whenever it's necessary and down for each other. Like, you say go and I'll go, 1, 2, 3, let's do it. So I feel like they are kind of, in a way, they just more by the book and follow, Starfleet's rules and agenda as opposed to their own personal one. But there is the personal element there too. But I also thought that just that dynamic of how Book was talking about, this is what Cleveland Booker meant to me, and this is what he taught me. And also about, you're the only family that I have. So there were a lot of moments there that I thought played very well. But yes, her portrayal, what's her name? The woman playing Maul?
Eve Harlow.
She's ridiculous. She's really good. Like you said, The camera loves her. Like, I think, she's like, the camera loves her. She plays the moments when she says at one point, she's like, let me guess, daddy issues. I don't know. The way she delivered that line was A1 to me. And I mean, just you really made this episode special. That's the other thing. It feels like watching this season, a lot of it is this kind of puzzle piecing of episodes where one really fits in well with the other. The last episode that you recalled from in this episode was like the moment with where Burnham sees the future of, and she's in a happy moment, or in the past, and she's in a happy moment with Book, and she kind of remembers that good times that they had together. That was also recalled in this episode. So very good continuity, I thought. Just excellent way to hit all the points. I enjoyed this episode a lot.
Awesome.
Carlos, I know we only have you for another minute or two here and you got to run, but 2 quick questions. The first one is, what is the Breen blood bounty? I didn't catch that word.
Oh, it's an Eriga. Here, I'll put it in the
the cool. I wrote it down correctly then.
Oh, yeah.
Please.
And it's just a made up Star Trek word that we made up in the room because they have different words for things. But yeah, that's the spelling is ERIGAH.
Great.
But yeah, it was meant to be a sort of like the kind of bounty you put on an offender that has kind of done the worst possible imaginable thing to you. And so that's what Locke is contending with in terms of his uncle and the greater Breen Imperium.
And the other quick thing I wanted to ask you is just looking back at this and watching the episode and really sinking your teeth into that. Was there a moment or a scene or any aspect of this that you're most proud of?
Ooh. Let's see.
We're gonna get a real answer. You can tell because he's really
it's tough because there's a lot. I really think the sort of the transitions and the structure of the flashbacks within the greater story, and how those things sort of went from Maul's POV into those things, in the way that was like actually like a really hard part of the writing, because at first we didn't have a framing device, we didn't have so that we got that to work really well, and that you guys are responding really well to it. That's something I'm really proud of because it was a hard break. the episode was it had a lot going on, even though it's a pretty small cast, in terms of like the amount of speaking roles that are really going on in it. And then I'm also really proud of like the Raynor stuff on the bridge.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Raynor stuff because I know we're running out of time, but because that's a whole nother thing. Raynor gets his captain, he gets a chance to be captain for a day, and he does a good job, I think, with the crew and kind of relating and not going on one of his pissed off tantrums.
Yeah, well, I think like it's always you never know how things are gonna play out when you're writing to a new character. Because I don't even think by the time we were writing episode 5 that we had cast him yet as Raynor. It was a tough cast. We went through a lot of different people as potentials, but so it was kind of hard to sort of figure out who he was. And Callum is just so good out there every episode, and he absolutely killed it in all those scenes. And yeah, so I love that particular scene where he is like calling on all of the people to solicit their ideas and just like coming up with all those sequences were some of the things that I was like the happiest to write and the most proud of, that they worked out really well in the execution of them.
Well, we're glad that you did, Carlos, Mr. Cisco. This has been so much fun. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to join us and for writing this radical episode and being part of the team that brings this entire season together. So thank you so much for everything that you do, and keep doing it. I guess we got 5 more episodes.
Yeah. Well played. It was a great episode.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, stick around. We're going to cover this episode much more. We will be right back on the 7th Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week on a beautiful, sunny LA day. The one thing you always have is a choice. Lieutenant Linus is preparing a shuttle as they say in the Battle of Krull, that was the Krull thing, serving without a gram of ossico. I didn't know what that was. We should have asked Carlos. There's a nice ensign that keeps a Cardassian Vol as a pet. Raynor doesn't know how the cake is boiled, or doesn't need to know how the cake is boiled. Michael sees her brother's station on the ISS Enterprise. That was really cool. That's a NAM for Spock. Maul has met Bolians with meaner left hooks. Maul and Book talk courier shop. Maul wants to retire in the Gamma Quadrant. The Breen have 2 faces. It doesn't matter if something is hexagonal as long as it works. And Dr. Cho became a branch admiral. So, Sirach, there were a ton of NAMs in this one, but I don't know what you want to hit next on this, because there's a ton to talk about.
I saw Grudge as a NAM and Osiris as a NAM.
Yep.
Those are the only 2 I got, though.
Yeah. Also got.
Oh, and Cleveland Book, but I don't know if we got that.
No, but we got Owoshikun and Detmer, because they weren't there in this episode, but Michael Burnham mentioned that they were, she's got them on a mission. So I was wondering, maybe this is a better question for Carlos as well. I was wondering, was there scheduling issues? And so they just had these other characters that were introduced kind of in the first episode to kind of fill in for them here and there, like Lieutenant Christopher did for Lieutenant Bryce. Or if just Detmer and Owoshikun are going to be featured in the next episode, and they just kind of, are planting the seed for later. I don't know. But obviously the big thing I wanted to ask you, Sirach, is when we got the Breen reveal, what was going through your head? Did you even think, because I did not expect the Breen at all. I was completely thrown for a loop there.
Yeah, right. You were expecting Breen at some point or another, because he kept screaming, "Breen, give me some Breen."
That's true, actually. Yeah, I forgot I was saying that.
Yeah. But I did want to see what was underneath there, and so I'm glad they gave me that moment, because we had this question from watching Deep Space Nine. We were wondering what's under that, under there, and I think they gave us a lot of backstory on the fact that one, Breen have we got a set of their morality structure, the set of their civilization structure in this episode, which I don't think we've gotten even in Deep Space Nine. They brought them in, but we didn't know what their ethics were like, or we didn't know if they were cutthroat with each other or amongst each other. Um, how they deal with other species, for example.
Totally.
This was a big look at how they regard other species, or interspecies relationships. So those were the big things about the Breen that I'm glad we got a chance to see.
We also got a NAM for Saru. That was another one I missed. A NAM for Saru. But yeah, what I was thinking of, the reveal was that Locke was a Breen. We knew we were going to see the Breen at some point, or we were hoping so. We didn't know, but we hope so. But the big reveal that Locke, in fact, is one of the Breen, and they had that cool jelly face. I don't know. I thought it was revealed very well. I don't think anybody was expecting that. And I thought it was really cool.
No,
I'm very happy about it. I hope we get more. I hope we get a lot more of it.
yeah. And it's funny because when Carlos was talking about the whole backstory on the explanation on why Locke, has a different skin texture than the Breen when they remove their helmet.
Mm-hmm.
My own silly, basic Star Trek 101, Star Trek for Dummies brain was saying, "Oh, his skin just oxidizes over time when they remove the helmet. It's just
Wow, that's pretty good, actually. that's
just." I was like,
that's pretty
you know,
good. Like it just kind of like blood or something. It kind of coagulates, or who knows. But
yeah,
actually, when
yeah,
Carlos was talking about how their skin hardens to kind of protect, their soft innards, my first thought was paging Dr. Mohammed Noor, time to do a bio trekkie on this. You'll be like,
yeah,
actually, that's very similar to what this fish does in the deep
yes,
sea. Hopefully we can get some
yes,
good information on that from him. But that's good. That's cool
yes,
stuff. There was so much that happened in this episode. We had a wormhole. We had, it was interesting that Booker feels like he needs to save Maul. Like he owes it to his mentor to try to save Maul. And I really thought that was a smart way to raise the stakes. They're not just trying to, beat the bad guys. They're not just trying to get the next clue, but now there's a personal vested interest in the characters. And I thought that was really good.
yeah. Um, and he hit the line when he says, "I'm Quajon." And I think
Mm-hmm.
the way he delivered that line was really good. And it kind of expressed the sentiments that you're talking about as far as his attachment to Maul and how he now felt an obligation to uh, treat her as his closest family. So there was a moment there that I thought was well expressed. A lot of other great moments and small lines. I thought Stamets, when he was trying to talk to Captain Rayner, and he was like, when you told me to don't worry, it'll all work out or something, and then he kind of paused and said, "It sounded better when you said it." I love that moment. I thought it was well delivered, and very funny for Stamets. I thought Adira, when she kind of felt the frustration of bringing the time bug in, I thought she nailed that
That
kind of
was
sentiment
interesting.
in
Yeah.
her moment to shine in
Mm-hmm.
this particular episode. So yeah, I thought that was great. Burnham hit a note really well when she was in a scene with Booker, and she says, Book, I see Maul means a lot to you, and he's like, yes, I want to save her, it's a lot, and she kind of looks at him and says, we have to bring them in either way, basically saying, I know you want to save her, but if it becomes difficult, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. Like, so she's just like preparing him for that. Like, either way, dead or alive, we got to, you saw the future that we saw, right? So,
Ain't
or
that the
I
truth?
know the future. And she
Mm-hmm.
saw the future. So she
That's a
was
good point.
making that clear.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So basically, this is one more piece to the puzzle, as you were mentioning earlier. One final thing was good fight scene. good
Yeah.
fight scenes. I had a couple laughs as well. I don't remember where it is. But there
It
was
doesn't
some.
matter. It'll work. Was a great laugh line. That was
That's
the
what it
one that I
was.
laughed.
That's what it was when he's
Yes.
like, "Why is it hexagonal?" And he's like, "It doesn't matter. It'll work." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's funny, Star Trek. That's funny," because he's like, "We don't need all the techno babble, the
Yeah.
Trekno
Yeah.
babble. Just try. It'll work." Rayner's like, "Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. Got it." That was exactly it. You're
Exactly.
right. So,
That was the moment.
piece of the puzzle. There are 5 more episodes to go. Really what this does is it gives us that little microcosm. It teaches us about the Breen, gives us some story development, and it sets us up for the second half of the season, which is already here. Really looking forward to that.
Me too.
Before we go, let's give a very special thanks to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, not Eve Harlow, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Noor, the aforementioned, Tierney C. Diekman, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manisfee, Greg K. Wickstrom in Hawaii. What? Jealous.
Yeah.
Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternett, Christopher D. Marshall, Joanna Yunker, Roy Epen, and of course, Jason Oken. All right, everybody, looking forward to the next one. For myself, Sirach Lofton, Aaron Eisberg, Melissa Longo, thank you all for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule. Sirach's calling in from LAX. Can you believe it?
Yeah.